Okay, welcome to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics, our happy hour with Bridget and myself. I'm Colleen.
Bridget.
Hey, Bridget. Haven't seen you in a while, Bridget.
I know. It's so weird. Like 3 days. I haven't seen her in 3 days. Yeah.
Right. Well, we were doing happy hours every week during quarantine, and we kind of missed them because we learned a lot. We had a really good viewership. We were happy with how people responded. So we decided, maybe once a month, or we have, if we get the urge every other week or something, but at least once a month, we're going to do these. So today we have on Lisa Mustard and Elizabeth Cush. They are therapists. Hello, whoever said hi. They are therapists that have graciously agreed to join us to talk about midlife self-confidence, self-esteem, self-care. Basically, it's time to look at ourselves. Give a little self-care to yourself in midlife and we'll talk all about it. But, midlife, up to this point, it's been all about kids. It's been all about husband.
Bridget. Sorry. I was trying to get on our Facebook page and I was trying to see who commented and it started
talking to you. Now your volume's off. It started talking to you, and then it cut your volume off.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
Oh, now you're back. Okay. So, as I was saying, it's time in midlife to start, kind of giving yourself a little bit of self-care and starting to focus on yourself as a priority. So first, we just want to say thank you guys for joining us. We're excited you're here to listen, and hopefully you'll ask some questions because we did a little poll in our Facebook group, and this was the number one topic people wanted to talk about: self-confidence, self-care, self-awareness. So we said, okay, this will be the first topic that we do for May. But welcome, Lisa, and welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're very appreciative that you guys are here. And just so the listeners know, Elizabeth has a podcast called Women Worriers, not Warriors, because I looked it up and I got the wrong one. Women Worriers. And it's so true. I mean, it's just women worry about everything and anything.
Yes.
And Lisa has a podcast called The Therapy Show, which is a very popular therapy show with other therapists. Yep. And she was a guest recently on our show, which will be up soon as well. So guys, thank you for coming on. When I mentioned to you both that we were going to talk about self-confidence in midlife, what was the first thing that you thought about? Lisa, you can start if you want.
Okay, I was going to say, well, thanks for having me, first of all. And hey, Biz, it's so good to see you. Biz was on my show. And
cool.
We're tight. We're friends. So we know each other.
Yep. Cool.
But the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh boy, I love this topic. I can't wait to talk about it. So I love this topic. I love it.
Oh, great. I'm excited. And, like I said, we did a poll and this came up number one.
Yeah.
What do you think, Lisa, before we get to Biz, is something that women can do in midlife to start to feel confident? And not just physical, like external confidence, but like that internal kind of confidence.
Ooh, that's a big question. I think, honestly, I always come back to the idea of to build confidence, you have to challenge yourself with new things. No matter, that's what I believe it comes down to, is putting yourself out there, trying something new and trying something different and not worrying so much about the outcome, just trying something new.
Okay, that's a great answer. What about you? I'm going to call you Biz because you said all your friends call you Biz.
There you go.
Just my friend.
Yes.
Biz, what would you say is a good way for women to start to gain self-confidence in midlife?
I would, speaking for myself and some of the clients that I've worked with, a lot of what undermines self-confidence, I think, is that sort of inner critical perfectionist part of us that thinks that we should be able to continue to do all things or to do all things perfectly. And so for me, what has helped build my self-confidence is self-compassion. So like allowing that I am imperfect, that I'm not going to get it right all the time. So if I am trying new things or building this business and doing the podcast, like I mess up, I make mistakes. And so I'm learning to have a better relationship with that inner critical part of me. And that's really helped a lot.
giving yourself a little grace, don't you think, Bridget?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just listening to both of you talking and thinking, yeah, I do that. and the big thing, too, about you said giving grace, but just letting go of these voices in your head and stopping to worry, or just stop worrying about what other people think. That is the biggest like little thing in my head. It's like, oh, they're not going to like this. They're not going to like me. And that is such a big step. And that's, I think, a great big gift that comes with getting a little older, that you just let that go a little bit. So,
yeah, it doesn't quite matter as much.
Right. So, yeah.
And we normally have questions usually at this point, but we seem to be having some technical difficulties on connecting to Facebook posts for questions. Have you seen any, Bridget?
Whoops, she got muted.
She keeps going out of volume. She sees something, but then, she sees a comment. Oh, there is one. So I'm completely wrong.
There it says, do you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Do you think women lose confidence and get depressed because their reproductive years or productive years? I wonder if they meant to say reproductive years are over. Anybody?
So let's throw that to Biz.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think it depends on the woman. I mean, for me, I would say, I'm full on in menopause and have been for quite some time. It was almost a relief that I didn't have to worry so much about getting pregnant, but two, that it was now time to focus on my relationship with my husband again, which kind of got lost. Some of it got lost along the way with kids and raising the family and moving and, just life, working. And so I know women who that can be a very hard time when, the reproductive years are over. I also know women who this is amazing. This is just easy and less to worry about.
Yeah.
What about you, Lisa? What do you think about how some women really mourn the loss of their reproductive years?
Well, you guys know I'm like the queen of saying it depends on the person. I always say that. And so when Biz said that, I was like, oh, thank you, Biz. I am personally, I'll be 47 in a couple weeks. I always forget how old I'm going to be. So I'm kind of creeping into that stage of my life. And I had kids later. So I didn't have my girls until I was 35 and 37. So let me tell you, I'm not mourning it at all. I'm so excited about kind of getting into this next phase of my life. And maybe, I'm not quite sure what that's about, but I truly believe it's because I've made peace with, I've grieved that part already. So I do think that there is a grief process for a lot of women that we go through, and it's going to look different for everybody. For some, it's going to be, there's meaning making experiences they've had, or they've had family members who have gone through a menopause that it was going to be just like that for me. And, so I think it just really depends on the person. And, we can tell ourselves a new story at any point in our lives, right? We can reinvent ourselves. We can really make the decision that moving forward, we're going to tell ourselves a new story. So maybe that's something to consider if you're struggling with it. I've been listening to a lot of who is it that was just talking about all this? I listen to a lot of podcasts, Robert Lang or somebody like that, and he's talking about in our lives we can rewrite our story at any given time. So I'm sorry about that tangent, but that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, I do. And you said it depends. So do you find that it could be like for someone that struggled getting pregnant or was wanting to have that other child? I feel like it's going to be more difficult for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, so I don't know
Yeah.
the situation of the person. I don't know how Colleen, I always tease Colleen that she could still have another child.
And I have told my children that God forbid I ever got pregnant, they would be raising that child. I'm done. I'm done. I would just be the grandmother.
Yeah.
And, but when they're 18, they know the truth.
And I think it is so individualized. I never regretted. I remember for a moment thinking, gee, that's weird. I can't have another child, but that was the most mourning I personally did. I felt I had my kids young, 22, not 22, 25 and 27. And after, I didn't look back. It's like when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was like, oh, it's a girl. I have a boy and a girl. I'm done. That's it. And I never looked back. I never said, gee, I wish I'd had another one, even though Colleen knows that I get empty nest weird and sad. But yeah.
But do you think it's also a question for women to try to reframe their thinking moving forward, as opposed to looking at, I've lost this, I've lost that, but look at what I've gained. And that's kind of a baby step forward. So when you're talking to your clients about this, how hard is it to get them to reframe the picture, or like you said, retell it to a different story?
I think it depends on the person.
Is that your answer?
Yeah. Well,
it's true though.
I can't blanket it. It really does depend on the person. And I think a lot of it depends on where they are on the spectrum of grief with whatever they're experiencing. Some women really love that idea of reframing it, and they take to it really quickly because it's just what they needed. They just needed somebody to give them permission to have that new thought pattern or the new belief system come in. Where some, it's going to take more time because there's a lot of layers as to the issues. If it's a one-time depressive episode versus a person who has been experiencing depression episodes over and over in their lifetime, it just depends. I mean, Biz, what do you think? Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say too that if you're when raising your children, that was your whole focus, that this, and even if you had a job, but that you felt that like your purpose was your raising your children, that's hard. Like to suddenly feel like, well, then now that's gone. What do I do now? Mm-hmm. So that's where I think sort of identifying values and meaning to their life for this part of their life. So yes, reframing, whether it's what did you like to do before you had children? Did you like to paint, or did you like to, were there things that you enjoyed that were in your life that maybe could give some meaning to your life now?
Yeah.
And that does kind of reframe the story that you're not just the mother. Mm-hmm. You can be the mother and the grandmother and the whatever is next.
Mm-hmm.
We have a great question from Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
She says, hello, ladies. Why am I always so anxious at my age, 57 years young? You're going to say it depends.
I don't know. You're anxious at your age.
And she doesn't mean where depends either. She doesn't. She just.
But I think a lot of women, what she's saying is that there's still I'm going to ask Biz, since she has women worriers. They still worry all the time, even about their adult children or about their life, or maybe it didn't turn out the way they thought it was going to be. And so they're anxious about that. What can they do to help calm that anxiety?
They can go see Biz.
No.
Well, but I think a lot of, so what I have learned, because the reason I created the podcast is because I have had a lot of anxiety in my life and I still experience it. But what I've learned is that oftentimes what kept the anxiety at bay, or, us not really seeing it, was the busyness of our lives up to that point. Like, so we did have the kids, or we were, running carpools or whatever, working a full-time job and raising our families. That it's a very good way to avoid not feeling the anxiety, the busyness. And as we're slowing down, maybe as there's more space in our life, the anxiety is showing up again. So to me, instead of trying to avoid and push it away and say, I'm not feeling it, it's welcoming it in. It's bringing it back to like, okay, so here it is. How can I be with the anxiety with some, I'm going to use the word again, compassion and caring and kindness versus, I don't want to feel this anymore. Mm-hmm. opens the door to better understanding, what might be coming up for you. And because anxiety can come from all kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm. But it's based in fear, really.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It's so funny. I think of things when you're all saying these things like, yeah, I've done that before, but just when you want to push something away, and if you do start to just do it, the load off your back once you have faced it. But it's hard to face it. It's so hard to allow that in. Yes. But I find myself on little things just doing that. Like, do I really want to? Oh, I don't want to call the repair person. Then I have to schedule a day. Then I have to be home. Little stupid things like that get me anxious. But yeah, I totally am like, okay, I marked that off my list. I called the repair person. They're coming. I know when they're going to be here, but it's just all kinds of little things like that.
Yeah.
But you know, along those lines, Lisa, do you find that as women get midlife, and because you were talking about this before, things that we were too busy to worry about and we just did without thinking, now all of a sudden they become overwhelming for some women. Like Bridget was saying, just making a simple phone call where you would have made that not thought twice about it with the kids in the background on the way to soccer. And now all of a sudden it may be the only thing really important to do that day. And it brings anxiety. I think that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I've experienced something similar. I think mine was more like I was just tired and overwhelmed. And it was like one thing I just want a day off. And now I got to do this one thing. It should be so simple and easy, but now I got to take the car in and get the tires rotated. Come on, so, I'm not quite sure what that would be. I mean, I know Biz mentioned fear is the root of anxiety. And I think sometimes anger can kind of creep in as well. So to me, that kind of brings up some anger. I would be angry for some reason, but I think that's so much is required of me and asked upon me daily with children and with work and with all the things that I want to do. And I just want to take a day off. Like, I just want a day off, like nobody bother me. And then now I got to call the repairman. So I don't know, maybe there's something there. I don't know. But
I think it's frustration. Like, why won't my house work?
Yeah. Right.
You're like, oh, then there's another thing women tend to do. We've talked about this a lot is they don't feel they deserve something. So like, well, I don't deserve to complain about this. Look at this. I have a roof over my head. I have a place to live. At least, I have this. Why am I complaining? Because I have to have somebody come and check something out. I'm lucky that I can have somebody come and check it out. So there's all that mixed in. So.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go there in a heartbeat. I can build a resentment so fast towards things. Trust me. Like, I know what I'm doing. But it's when I find myself in that moment and the frustration and the resentment building up, I really have to take a moment and go, okay, what's going on? Like, what is going on? Why are you feeling so worked up about this? And usually it's what you said, it's like, I just don't want to deal, or I don't think I should have to deal with this, or I'm overwhelmed and this should be so easy, but here I am resenting the fact I got to do. I totally get it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes those, the bigger feelings, the resentment, the anger, the fear, the grief, that, if we're not allowing ourselves to just feel whatever it is, angry about having to call the repairman all of a sudden, and we're like, I shouldn't be feeling this way, so let's stuff it down, let's not feel it, then the anxiety, bubbles up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
As someone who suffered from anxiety for most of my life,
I think we all have.
I have found it incredibly difficult to sit in that feeling. I know for me, my coping mechanism is always, let's find the answer. If we get to the finish line, then I don't have to sit in the muck of it. And through life lessons, I've learned, okay, I don't have a choice all the time. There's not always an answer. So what would you suggest for women, Biz, when they have to sit in the fear and the anxiety, to just make it kind of manageable, or find the courage to say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to sit here with this until I can let it kind of pass through me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that has helped me, that I advocate for all the time, is building a meditation practice and a mindfulness practice, because it helps our body remember that these feelings come and go all the time, where sometimes we're so busy that we don't realize that, we don't recognize it. So pausing, slowing down, allowing ourselves to be with whatever's coming up can help just decrease the intensity, but it also can help us identify, what is it that I'm feeling? What is bringing this anxiety on right now? And can I explore that in a kinder, compassionate, more mindful way versus, oh, I hate this anxiety, I wish it would just go away, which was my go-to for most of my life. Saying, oh, there it is. Maybe this is telling me I do need to slow down and sit with it and let this, whatever it is, come to the surface.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's hard to do. That's really
Oh,
hard.
it is.
So hard.
It's hard. I find, and I don't know if either one of you, like I looked at, Biz has a meditation guide on her website. I saw that. I downloaded it.
Listeners know, what is your website, Biz? Just
Yeah.
people want to check.
So you can either go to it's woman, not women, womanwarriors.com or progressioncounseling.com. So, and my podcast is there too. So they're linked to those.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I just want to make
that's okay. But I know, like, I was reading that, and now I do have time to do that. But I can remember these times when our kids were little and thinking, I don't even have time to do that. Or if I do that, or if I try to acknowledge this, I'm inconveniencing someone else. And that is a big problem women deal with is, I mean, that's a whole nother layer there. I mean, what advice, Lisa, could you give on anybody that just feels they're an inconvenience? I don't know why I feel like that. I'm one of 12 kids. So it was like, somebody has to have time for me, then they're taking time away from someone else. So that is a big issue. And I think women can feel that way for a long time, that they are inconveniencing someone else.
Yeah.
I don't know what advice you would give for that.
Yeah.
I think that's really wise and insightful, Bridget, that you recognize where it comes from. And I think that's where I would want to start with the person presenting in front of me. Same thing is to really talk about, what does it feel like to feel like you're an inconvenience? Really process what that was like for you as a child, and really kind of get into that. Because you do, I'm not saying you, but you would bringing that, if you never really process it or dealt with it or move through it, you're going to bring it into your current relationships. And I used to do that all the time before I got into therapy. I thought I was an inconvenience. I thought I was too much. I thought I had all of these thoughts and shoulds, and then it all kind of came together in the perfect storm when I met my future husband, who was my boyfriend back then. And he didn't think I was an inconvenience. He didn't think I was too much, but it still was in my head, and it still got in the way of our relationship. So I went to therapy for the first time in my life in my late 20s, and absolutely was just in awe of what I learned about myself. And it was a family of origin issue. So I would say to women, if you find yourself feeling that way, you're not alone. I mean, we all have a little bit of that to some degree based on how we were raised. And, talk to somebody, really get therapy for that, because you're not an inconvenience. And you are not too much. You are perfectly made as you are, and you have gifts and you have talents and lights that you're holding in because you're fearful of showing your true self. And I hate that for women. I hate that.
I know. And I have a feeling they all, I know it's not just me. And I know my parents did the very best they could. They were not bad people at all.
Right.
I mean, there's just so much they could spread,
right,
to all these children. And believe me, I was not neglected or anything like that. But
But I think it goes back to what we talked about before with like these stories that we carry with us about like, I'm too much, I'm an inconvenience. However we internalize that, whether your parents with 12 children, you said, right?
Yeah.
I would have been feeling,
Yeah.
as a mom, so overwhelmed that even just a little bit of like, Mom, I'd be like, you're too much. Get away from me, right?
And she wasn't like that. So talk about someone who needed some, probably. She was great. She was great. But
Well, it's interesting that you're talking about feeling like an inconvenience, because I think for a lot of women, as we start to age and we're not as much in the corporate world and we're not as needed by our children, and maybe your husband or your partner is still doing what they do, it's not really changed, that you can start to feel like an inconvenience again. Like, I don't want to bother my children because they're already working full time and they're busy. And I don't want to bother, I don't work as much anymore. I'm not the CEO or whatever. So do you think that it can actually come back as you get a little bit older, feeling that inconvenience? Like, I'm now inconveniencing my family?
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of like what Biz was saying, I think, before about, if you haven't processed it or kind of sat with it, and it just kind of, we're so busy. That's what it was. She was saying we were so busy with all the things that we were doing. We didn't feel like we were inconvenient. We were getting stuff done. We were being helpful. We were being the caretakers. And at the time we were in their stuff, and then as they leave and they go off, we have to find new ways to feel involved and feel connected. And you can feel like an inconvenience if you guys haven't figured that out. What's that going to look like? This new you is going to look like the new role that you play to them. And I don't want to say it's as simple as having a conversation with your kids, because it's never that simple. But it's really thinking about, how do you want to define your roles moving forward, because you're not an inconvenience. That's something I would want. You hope that somebody would process with a therapist and really kind of get to the core of that. And then from there, learn new ways to be involved and engaged. And it can be really exciting and not so terrifying, or not so humdrum, I guess, is the way I see it.
Do you think that with age, we start to build more self-awareness of our own needs? And I know that we had talked before that sometimes brings up guilt, that we're focusing on ourselves. But when women start to get older and we start to give ourselves that permission to become self-aware, and it can be very intimidating for a lot of women and very overwhelming, do you have suggestions for that, for them to kind of figure out, okay, what do I want now? Mm-hmm. What makes me happy? What about you, Liz?
Yeah, I have definitely, I know I have quite a few clients that struggle with this. I myself have struggled with this, just moving into, I'm going to be 60 this year, and this feeling like I should have this figured out already. And I don't. I'm still in therapy and love that I do that. But identifying needs and really being able to say what you like, even to yourself, to say, like, I would really like to not have to call this repair place or whatever, right? Whatever it might be. And it's not that, and I think a lot of figuring that out is through, whether it's therapy or, doing other types of energy work, and really sort of listening to yourself. And that just takes practice, but also can be kind of scary, because what if I sit with this and these feelings come up and I don't know what they are? Mm-hmm. That can be terrifying. Or what if I don't know what I need or trust that I know what I need? That's a very scary place to be. And to me, either a therapist or a coach or someone who can help walk you through that. So, and to know that you're not alone. That's
such a big thing.
Yeah.
Knowing it through everything, it seems like knowing you are not alone, it knocks down so many walls. Just to know you're not alone, that's just the big thing. Then you can move from there. And I think that's what's been great through all of this talk and listening to all of your podcasts. Just you hear so much, okay, we're not alone. This is what's going on. So it's great advice. Yeah.
Lisa, how do you we talk about mindfulness, but can you give us a little perspective on what that is and how can you go about practicing or creating mindfulness practice?
Sure. For me, I'm the reason I say it like that is today I was trying so hard to be mindful and my kids were just like, just everything everything I wanted to get done today just did not happen. And I finally got to the point where I was like, you know what, just be in the moment and stop trying so hard to have your way. And when I realized that, I just was like, you know what, the podcast stuff can wait till tomorrow. I'll just do it tomorrow. And when we talk about mindfulness, it doesn't have to be something that's, you turn on a meditation or you get into a yoga pose. It really is just sitting with yourself and taking notice of what you're thinking and you're feeling. Just take notice. And I know Biz mentioned that can be scary for a lot of people. It certainly can. For a lot of people, that's going to be really uncomfortable. But that's part of being mindful, is recognizing that things are uncomfortable. And, don't be afraid of the discomfort, because that's where the growth lies. So many people don't want to feel uncomfortable that that they will distract themselves from the discomfort as much as they can. So, I felt really discomfort. I felt really uncomfortable today. I was pissed off. I wanted to get my work done. My kids wouldn't stop talking. And I was just like, why did I, he's like, ah! So I was like, you know what, Lisa, just does this, and I think as a mom, and I'm younger and my kids are younger, so I have to make that decision. Like, is it worth me freaking out and maybe scarring them for life that they need therapy? They're gonna need therapy anyway, and I'm all for it. But do I role model what I want to be for them in this moment, or do I just freak out? And I made the decision to role model, and I was like, I'm just going to be mindful. So being mindful in that moment was paying attention to how I felt. What did I want to do with it? And then giving the attention to my 9-year-old daughter, who was just wanting me to play with her for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. And I felt so much better afterwards. So I just don't want people to think that mindfulness has to be some big ordeal or big, breaking out the incense and downloading all of the meditation apps. Like, it's just about focusing inward for a few minutes and tapping into your thoughts and your feelings and saying to yourself, what do I need right now? Mm-hmm. And just go with it. Just go with it. Give yourself what you need. Now, I'm not saying, because someone out there is going to go, well, what do I do when I'm at work? And I just really need to leave my job. And really, you're a grown up, first of all. So don't interpret this as like a permission to like leave your job. Yeah. Go be what you're needing in that moment. But recognize that's how you feel. And maybe the feeling is, I don't want to be at this job anymore, or I want to do something different. But that's what it's all about, is getting quiet and still with yourself, and just kind of, you will find yourself you will learn about yourself if you do that. And so that's what I suggest. I mean, that's what I see as mindfulness. Biz, if you have another perspective, let me have it, because I need it. I needed it today.
Well, and to me, it's about, tuning into yourself, but too, just allowing yourself, like you did, to be present with your daughter. Mm-hmm. So what is she, yes, what did you want? You wanted to get all these things done, but you were recognizing in this moment, that's not going to happen. And can I let that go and just be present with my daughter and play with her for a little bit? But it can also just be like, if you were to take a walk, and you can do this with your partner, with your dog, with yourself, but just allowing yourself, instead of being on your phone, instead of being in your head with the worry of what should I be doing next, you're just noticing, what am I seeing? What am I smelling? How do my feet feel as I'm walking on the ground? Can I feel the sun on my skin, the air around me? Am I noticing that my pants are rubbing me the wrong way? Like, whatever it is, like, just being, it's really tuning into your sensory experience. So taste, smell, touch, see, hear, it's just being very, very present with those senses. So you're absolutely right, Lisa. Like, it doesn't have to be this Zen experience, but it can be something you do. If you want to bring small practices into your life, like, it can be something you do as you're showering or brushing your teeth or washing dishes or playing with your daughter. Like you can bring that mindful experience and it is about not being stuck in the stress and the worry and in that part of you that wants to be like, what's next? What's next?
Right.
Or what happened before this? It's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so important because there are a lot of midlife women and men who get stuck in the past of what I'm missing out on, what I've already experienced. Is this the best that it's going to be? And by doing that, I think you're missing what's right in front of you and the baby steps that you can take. Because we're always, when we interview people for the show, they'll say it does not have to be grand purposes. You can get stuck in a purpose. It could just be something that simply brings you joy. And especially now with COVID and being quarantined, this small, simple things like if you like to have a garden or take a walk or just something to kind of ease and give yourself a little grace and peace of mind. It's so important right now, whether you have a 9-year-old or
a 27-year-old. Yes.
Or a dog that just wants to bark at everything that goes by.
have one of those too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was listening to your show, Biz, and you had a guest on talking about cortisol buildup. And it was just really hitting home because it really focused on how much we as humans, we're not designed to keep that fight or flight thing in us. But the way things are now, and especially right now during quarantine, and I didn't get to finish that show yet because I was called away, and I've got to go back to it. But is there, I know a meditation would be great. Advice to try to get ourselves out of building up so much cortisol, of being in that fight and flight situation for so long.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, Dr. Erin Kinney was who I talked to. She's a local naturopath here in Annapolis. And her big tip for her clients and what she shared on the podcast was she encourages her clients and people in her life to, what does she call it? I forget, but take 10 minutes and get horizontal. So just lay down. Like if you're in your office and you don't have a couch, lie on the floor. If you're at home and you have the ability to lay in your bed, you can meditate, but just put your phone away and allow your body to re-regulate, right?
Wow.
So just she's like 10 minutes. Do it midday, and that will help your cortisol levels and your adrenals.
I was listening, and I was just thinking when I listened just this time, so many people, there's so much uncertainty. And I think that's what's been so hard. No one really knows what's happening. This is so new to everybody.
Right. And what's next?
And what's next? No one knows. So I think for me, that's an anxiety thing too, because you always kind of have a picture of what's going to happen. And I don't have small children, so I know, Lisa, this has got to be really hard. I mean, it's hard enough to have your 20-something-year-olds and say, look, but people, this has never happened in my life. I don't know what this is going to look like. And then to have children, younger children that, are with you. I don't know any advice for people in that situation because no one knows, though. So it's just so much uncertainty.
Yeah. I know when all of this happened, and I know Biz and I are in a bunch of like groups for therapists, and we all talk to each other, and I got a lot of good support from other moms who are therapists. And so some of the things that we were talking about was keeping them on the schedule as best as you can, looking for the opportunities in this. So for example, my girls have become a little bit more independent and making themselves lunch, kind of putting their schedule for the day. The hardest part is they're not seeing their friends as much. In our neighborhood, they can kind of see them and ride their bikes together, and then they have their activities that I live in South Carolina, and they started to open things up here. So we're kind of looking at, okay, well, what is gymnastics going to look like when you go back, and how do you feel about that? But I got to tell you, kids are super resilient. Like my kids, I think resiliency is taught a lot of the time by the parents. So if your kids are struggling, I say this with love and compassion, take a look at how you're responding and reacting to what's going on, because they will model and they will, emulate what you're doing. So get some support, get some good help from women who have what you want. Like, so look to the moms who are doing it the way you want to do it, not the ones that are freaking out just like you. And I say that with love. I don't know how else to say it, but I say it with love. So that's what I've been doing. I've just been connecting with other moms who I want to learn from, and I want to kind of be in their circle. And it is hard and it is stressful. And I hopefully your partner, your spouse is there to support you, and you guys are able to make decisions together. That's real. I think that's important. But yeah, I don't know. Every day is different. And right now we're dealing with like end of the year for 6th grade math. And she is like by the skin of her teeth, she's going to turn that math homework in. But it's a lesson for her about procrastination. And I couldn't teach her, right? She had to go through it, and she's going through it. And it ain't pretty, but it's all right. And so for me, sitting in that discomfort of seeing her struggle is hard, because I want to fix it for her, but I know I can't. So, yeah.
You want to do that even when they're in their 20s.
You do. You totally do. Yeah.
And their 30s. So
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
My mom still wants to do it for me, I think. And so,
It is.
Sorry, Bridget, I just have to. One of the interesting things that I read, just to change the subject a little bit, is that the average person has between 12,000 and 16,000 negative thoughts a day about themselves.
Yeah.
So what can you suggest for our listeners about changing the negative talk in your head? Because really, we say things to ourselves that we would never say to another human being. But for some reason, we say it to ourselves, and it just hits that nerve. How can we, I know there's affirmations and things like that, but what else can you do to help that? Biz?
So I am a huge proponent and advocate for a self-compassion practice. And so what does that look like? It is sitting with, would I, when you're noticing, so being mindful about what you're saying to yourself and hearing how critical and harsh we can be, asking yourself in that moment, would I ever say that to my best friend, to my sister, my whoever, my partner? Most times the answer is definitely not, right? We would never say those things. So what would I say if I were supporting someone who was struggling like me in this moment? What would I say to them? So then thinking of like, oh my gosh, I know this is really hard. What can I do to help? Can I be here for you? So, okay, if you would say that to somebody else, can you say that to yourself? Mm-hmm. Can you say, this is really hard. I am struggling right now and it sucks and I don't like it. But can I offer myself that same, like, what can I do for me right now? How can I take care of myself in this moment? And it can feel awkward and uncomfortable to be saying these really, like, I don't know. So there's a psychologist, Kristin Neff, and you can look her up at selfcompassion.org. And she has practices on her website, both meditations and actual things you can do, like exercises like this. And she advocates for you saying to like, oh, dearest, you're struggling right now. And like, to me, that feels, I'm like, no, I would never say that to myself. But I can be nice. I can be sweet and kind and compassionate for those moments that I do struggle. And I would say that those practices, the meditations, have really shifted my work around my inner critic, because I was pretty harsh most of the time. Mm-hmm. And it just opens up this new relationship with yourself where it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to feel bad about it, but we don't have to beat ourselves over the head about it.
Which is our natural instinct to immediately go to that failure versus success mentality. Yeah. And what do you think, Lisa? I mean, it's hard when, I think as we get older, we do give ourselves a little bit of grace in saying that success and failure aren't so definite ends of a spectrum. Mm-hmm. But how do we get that to retrain in our brain?
I think it's just practice. I mean, there's no other way around it. You just have to keep practicing it, and you have to just keep at it, and eventually you'll get it. I mean, I truly believe that I eventually got it, and I still work on getting it. And I don't think it was until my mid 40s that I actually understood that it really does take practice, and it does take habit, and you can't give up on yourself. And yeah.
What would you say to someone that needs to say that to them, but they have an outside force being negative to them, whether it's a boss at work or a partner, a spouse, or any other family member or a friend that keeps feeding the negativity to them? And it's just hard to break through that. I see a lot of anxiety in people that they're very anxious about their work because somebody they work with is just looking for them to make a mistake. Any advice there?
Yeah, that's really hard. And I totally understand that. I've been in that situation in my career, and I work with therapists. So imagine coming from a therapist, it was really bizarre. But I also, I've worked for the military for the past 10 years.
That's true.
And I've encountered a lot of people like that. And, it's funny, when in the beginning, I used to get so worked up and I'd get so mad and I would be like, don't they know? But then as I became more worldly, I don't even know if that's what I'm trying to say, but became more experienced in what I do, I realized that they got issues. And it's not just me that they put that on. They put that on everybody in their lives. And so that kind of helped me see them differently. Like, I felt bad for them after kind of realizing that, because I started to watch them in other situations and I was like, oh, it's not just me. They do it to everybody. So that really was an eye opener for me. Like, oh, I'm not the only one. I had to make that decision moving forward. Was I going to let it bother me? Was I going to let it affect me? Was I going to let it get under my skin at a job I really enjoyed, that one person and the one attitude? I think it's harder if you're married to it, right? Or probably if you're married to it, that's probably the hardest situation.
Oh, it's got to be, because then you've got to live. Yeah. You've got to live with that.
And so, therapy. Go to therapy. Talk to a therapist. Please talk to a therapist, and decide how you want to deal with it. Because sometimes you can't just leave it.
Yeah, it's so hard.
No, and it is a challenge too, because as we hit midlife and our children start to leave, some women may not have even put a great emphasis on the way their spouse treated them, but now it's just the two of them.
Right.
And all of those issues are going to become much more amplified when it's just the two of you. And also, I think women, as we get a little older, don't want to put up with a lot of that either. We do gain enough self-awareness to know that we deserve better. Don't you think, Biz?
Yeah, I do. I agree. And I think, as you said, we were saying before, as you're finding your voice, as you're really kind of figuring out who you are, then suddenly that doesn't feel okay anymore. I think I agree with Lisa. Therapy can be very, very helpful in sort of examining. Sometimes I think when we have sort of created this inner dialogue for whatever reason, whether it was our family of origin stuff about our own self-worth, we tend to then find people that reinforce how we feel about ourselves. So by then practicing the compassion, by being kinder to ourselves, then we're less tolerant of other people being unkind to us too. And we recognize the more subtle ways that people can be intolerant of us or critical of us, because a lot of times, especially in not physically abusive relationships, there's a lot of in verbal abuse and emotional abuse, it's very subtle and not as easy to identify. But I think especially now that we're all kind of stuck together
right?
For a while,
right.
It can be very challenging.
It can be, yeah. I was, curious because I was just thinking about work situations where that would bring on the anxiety, and just trying to get out of that situation was so difficult. And, I get nervous thinking about that. I'm so glad I'm not there right now, in that situation. And especially if they're your boss, the person you report to.
Right.
And I know so many people that go through that. And just I hear about it so much. So That's a tough one.
It's very hard.
It's worse.
Yeah, it kind of leads to an interesting question, Bridget, because, as state, like you were saying, Lisa, South Carolina, start to open up, the anxiety level for people in leaving their homes, because as much as they felt quarantined and stifled in their houses, they were safe.
Right.
Now you're asking them to go out into the unknown. And especially if you have any kind of pre-existing conditions, or you're in the age group that's dangerous, or really anybody, because you never know who's going to get hit. What would you suggest for people to kind of strengthen the resolve to leave the house and take those baby steps out into the world again? Lisa, what would you say first?
Wow. I think you have to do what you're comfortable with. So like my mom is in her early 70s and my stepdad is in his mid 70s. And they live up in Northern Virginia where there's more people than, you can, and not far from Biz because she's up in Maryland. But we in South Carolina, we don't have, our state is much smaller. So it's not that scary for me to envision if they were here. Now they only go where they're comfortable. So I would encourage people to do what they're comfortable with. Hopefully that is not an irrational thought for them, because I know that I see the people at my gym the older people aren't coming in. And so I think about them and I wonder, how are they doing? What are they doing to stay healthy and fit? Because they need this place a lot more than some of the younger people do. So I say you have to go with what you're comfortable with and what feels okay. Talk to your doctor and get information. Don't just go by what the media is going to tell us, because they have an agenda. Both sides, all media has an agenda. So talk to your doctor and get facts about your risk and your risk factors, I guess.
What would you say, Biz, to those people out there that are really scared now to leave the house, that for whatever reason, whether it's rational, irrational? I mean, if it were up to me, my mother would be bubble wrapped and never. I mean, that's the way she's watching. And I know she wants me to bubble wrap. But say to people who really, I'm anxious to leave the house. I don't know. You can self-talk it, but when you step out, I had to get a mammogram this weekend, and there were 3 other people in the office. I was really uncomfortable with that, and I was like, "That's crazy," but still, the anxiety's there. So, what's your suggestion would you give?
Well, I think we talked about this at the very beginning. Like, there's so much unknown. There's so much that we don't have concrete information about. Like, was it safe to be in an office with 3 other people? I hope so. And I hope my doctors are doing what they need to do to keep all of us safe. But I agree with Lisa. You have to do what works for you, but to know that if you're feeling anxious, you're not alone. And when we can't control things, when we don't know the outcome of stuff, that creates anxiety. So it's going to be there.
Right.
And you just, you have to do, if it means for you that you go out with a mask all the time, then you do that. Like, if that's what helps. To me, the mask makes me so much more stressed out, but I wear it, when here in Maryland, we still have to, or we're still supposed to. But it is scary. And I think you have to just do what works for you.
Yeah. Because that's been a tough thing. Where we live in Tennessee, there's some shamers out there shaming on each side. Yep. Like mask wearers versus the non very vocal. Like my husband was admonished in our local liquor store because he had a mask on, not by the workers, but another customer, like,
oh my gosh.
I'm like, are you kidding? Just someone that feels free to do that. So, and that's a tough, then it makes you more anxious to go out. You're like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to make some comment because I have a mask on. So,
and do you think that comes from their own fear?
Yeah. And well, I think that with social media, so many people are giving their opinions behind a computer, and it's kind of, it feels really good to give your opinion at times about stuff you really, really, excited about or have feelings behind. And I was thinking about this the other day. if I'm out with my girls and I get a comment from another mom, how am I going to respond in front of my children? And I've made the decision, I'm just not going to respond. I'm not even going to give them anything. I'm just going to be like, thanks. Like, I'm not even going to engage. And I know that's going to be really hard to do in the moment, but I don't feel like giving them their energy. I don't want to give them what they're looking for because they want it. Like, so to me, it's kind of like, well, I'm going to show you, I'm not even going to respond. And how's that going to make you feel? That's going to make you even more upset, but that's on that person.
Yeah.
And I had a friend up in Northern Virginia who told me that they were on Facebook, like shaming people. If you didn't wear a mask, they take your picture and put it up on Facebook.
Oh,
and I
gosh.
thought, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. And I just couldn't believe that. And I was like, what does that say about that person who's taking your picture? Not about the person in the picture, but it's more about them than it is about us. And
Yeah. My husband did not engage. He did. He was like, I don't have time for that person. With his eyes. Just made his purchase and went on.
Right.
But yeah, there is a whole lot of that going on. And I think a lot of advice from so many people is back off the social media, back off the news if you can. I mean, they had on the news the other day and I was trying to cook and I was like, we can't watch this anymore because I can just feel like my blood boiling. I can just feel it through my skin. So that is just a lot. I think that people right now, if it's pretty out, thank goodness the sun just came out. Colleen, I can see it behind your window.
That was like in the dark here.
Yeah, because it wasn't very pretty this morning here. It was rainy, and I'm so glad I see the sunshine, and I'm going to go for a walk. Yeah, so
yeah,
and that's also gets back to self-care. Like when you are, even if you're not in a pandemic, but you are getting older and maybe your kids aren't in the house anymore and your husband or partner or friends are all still working, it's, one of the freedoms you earn is self-care for yourself. Like you get to start to do things, whether it's take a bath or go for a hike or a walk or make a cup of tea and watch whatever you want. It's a freedom. And it's, again, reframing your brain into thinking, oh, okay, there are little joys I can have for myself each day. Do you guys mention that when you're in therapy, like to find the small joys in your day? Do you do that?
Definitely. And just as you were saying, not only do we have negative thoughts about ourselves, but we tend toward the negative as humans. That is just how we are hardwired. And that it takes a lot of effort to think about the positive. And so I try to remind clients, like even small accomplishments, like today I took a walk or took a shower, or I was nice to myself when I made a mistake, right? Yeah, that remind yourself of those. Like, all right, I did that. Or I had that mindful moment today where I actually sat with my daughter and played with her, and it was nice, just to, be aware of, but be conscious of the positive, because otherwise it gets lost in all the negative.
It's true. It does. You're right.
Lisa, do you ever feel like when you are going to react to something that your children are watching?
Oh, heck yeah.
Because I still feel that way when they're in their 20s and maybe busy in their 30s, but they are still watching our reaction to the stress of this or life. And taking ourselves, I think I took myself way too seriously when I was younger. And I hope that my children, I have 2 daughters, learn to give themselves a little bit more of a break, give themselves a little more grace. Yeah. But do you feel like your kids are watching when you decide to, okay, I'm not going to respond? Me?
Yeah. Oh, I know they're watching because they will bring it up later. They'll ask me, why didn't you say anything to him? Or why did you respond like that? And I think, I want them to ask questions. My husband and I are big believers in teaching them to think critically. Like you have to ask questions. And just because you have questions, you don't be afraid, as a girl, especially, don't be afraid to ask questions. And I was afraid to ask questions as a little girl. And I thought my voice should be small and I thought I should be meek. And so I didn't find my voice. I didn't even know I had a voice until my late 20s. And so, I want to teach them and show them like, oh, mama's got a voice. It's not everybody needs to hear it. at all, but know that I'm paying attention, and I want you young ladies to start paying attention to what's going on around you and ask questions. And if you don't understand something, come talk to me and Daddy. And you know, my daughter, she's going to be 12. She makes fun of me now. She kind of understands what I do. She's like, Mom, you can take off your therapist hat now. And I'm like, sorry about that. But then at the same time, she'll say something like, you know, I'm lucky to have a mom who's a therapist. And I'm just like, oh, I hope I'm not messing you up for the rest of your life.
Don't worry, you are.
No, I don't.
We can't help it as parents.
Yeah, we do. And I'm okay with it. I just want them to know that, you know, it's okay to have all these feelings and not know the answers, but ask questions. Just ask questions. So it's okay to ask questions.
Speaking of which, for our last question of the day, one, can you just give a piece of advice to midlife women who are kind of going through this journey and feeling the anxiety of maybe getting a little older and a little less seen and heard? And also, can you, after you answer that, can you just let us know one more time about your podcast and where people can find you? So let's start with Lisa.
Okay. So I'm a big believer in knowing what your values are and what you stand for throughout your lifetime. Now they're going to shift and they're going to change. So as you enter midlife, they're going to be different. They're going to be prioritized differently. So I think that a lot of the times what happens for us, because I'm getting into it, and it, you know, midlife can start in late 30s. All this can start 35-ish. So just because, you know, you're like, oh, I'm 33. Oh, honey, it's coming for you. And that's good. I think it's a good thing because we change and we evolve as we grow. So so write down your priorities and your values and get really, really clear on them. And then ask yourself, how congruently and authentically are you living them out? Because I think that's where the disconnect can happen for a lot of women and in midlife is things start to shift, and we're over here working in this path, and things are shifting around us. And the next thing we know, we wake up and we're like, wait a minute, things have changed, and I don't get it. Like, so that's okay though. But start really paying attention to what your values are and your priorities, and then how do you want to show up moving forward? Because you can pivot and be anything you want at any phase of your life. I mean, I truly believe that. And so you can find me, my podcast is called The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. It is a podcast for therapists. We talk about clinical issues and professional development, but there are some episodes on there that would be great for just people who want to learn about all kinds of stuff. And then I have a website, lisamustard.com, where you can go and find me. And I'm on social media. I'm not hard to find. I'm usually on Facebook. So I would love to connect with people. I don't do private practice, and I'm not coaching. So I'm happy to like be an ear.
But you can refer people to therapists that maybe you think would be a good fit.
I only practice in South Carolina, so that's kind of my wheelhouse, or people in South Carolina. But I got a lot of therapist friends across the country, and happy to hook people up if I can. Like Biz.
Like Biz, exactly.
Yes.
That's how we learned about Biz. So Biz, how would you answer the question?
I would sort of tag team off of what Lisa said, that you're not stuck where you are. Like there's always opportunity to shift and change, even in midlife. I will just share a little bit about my own story, is that I didn't complete grad school until 53. So I didn't even open my practice until I was 54 or 55, however long it took me to get licensed. So, you know, we're never too old to do things differently, to shift, to even to just reevaluate where you are. And that change is scary, but it's also can be amazingly energizing and exciting.
Yes.
To find me, you can Google my name, Elizabeth Cush, and that will bring up my website. But my website is progressioncounseling.com. I, like Lisa, I am in private practice, but can only see people in the state of Maryland. I am branching into coaching, but I am not there yet. So that will be opening up and allowing me to work with people across the country. But two, I'm happy. I actually had a call from someone who listened to the podcast wanting to work with me, and they were like in Indianapolis. So we can find therapists. We have these wonderful groups that we can help place you with a therapist, hopefully somewhere in your local area if you need it. So, but the podcast is Woman Warriors, And you can find that at womanwarriors.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And it's woman, not women.
Woman, like a woman like
one of us.
Warrior, but
Yeah.
warrior.
One woman.
And we were.
Yes.
You both have some great things on your website.
Yes, yes.
Check that out.
Great.
I will say that our episode this week is all about sleep, the lack of it, the need for it, and ways to get it. So we've got a great response on that. It's amazing how many people do not sleep, or at least don't sleep well. So
Yeah.
take a look for that at any podcast platform or on all forms of social media. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
Yes.
Thank you both, Lisa and Biz, for being such great.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks for
Bye.
having
Bye.
us.